Good morning. Here is your Executive Intelligence Summary for Wednesday, February 25th, 2026. Here's our operational roadmap for today. We're going to kick things off with a major tech-led shock in the markets. Then we'll cover key updates from the Supreme Court and the Health Ministry. After that, we'll dive into some critical corporate news, and we'll finish up with the Editorial Digest and a snapshot of the markets. So, let's get right to it. All right, let's start with our lead story. The biggest signal today is a pretty significant market downturn. It's being driven by the technology sector, and the conversation is all about the risks of AI-driven disruption. So, we're looking at a sharp sell-off in Indian equities. While the BSE Sensex closed down 1.28%, the real story, the one everyone's talking about, is in tech. The Nifty IT index took a nosedive, plunging 4.7%, and that's its fifth straight day of losses. This is all being fueled by what reports are calling a fresh panic over AI's potential impact. And just to put that daily drop into perspective, the scale of this drawdown is, well, it's huge. The Nifty IT index has now lost a staggering 24% just this year alone. So what does that mean in real money? Well, in just one trading session, this sell-off completely wiped out 3.04 trillion rupees in investor wealth. That's a massive recalibration no matter how you slice it. So what's the catalyst here? What's driving this? Well, a big factor that hammered software stocks was a new research note from Citrini Research. It painted a picture of a 2028 scenario where U.S. unemployment could spike to 10.2%, and they linked it directly to AI-driven layoffs. You can imagine, that projection sent some serious shockwaves across global tech markets.
You know, the implication here is crystal clear, and it's not just about market sentiment anymore. This is being acknowledged at the highest levels of the industry. HCL Tech's CEO Siva Jayakumar put it very directly. He said that this technological shift is going to be painful because it really involves people. So on one side, you have investors rapidly pricing in this disruption risk, and on the other, you have executives openly talking about a difficult human transition ahead.
Okay, let's move on to macro, politics, and governance. Our first update is coming from the Supreme Court, which is taking some urgent action on the voter roll revision in West Bengal.
The court is actually expanding the number of judicial officers who are assisting the Election Commission, and it's because of the sheer volume of work. The Chief Justice of the Kolkata High Court pointed to 50 lakh claims and objections that are still pending. That is a massive number that just requires more hands on deck to get through it all in time.
Next up, a really important public health initiative. The Union Health Ministry is getting ready to launch a nationwide HPV vaccination program.
So here are the details. The program is going to be free and completely voluntary, and it's targeting girls who are 14 years old, using the Gardasil vaccine. This is a really critical move, especially when you look at the data. Cervical cancer is the second most common cancer for women in India, with about 80,000 new cases every single year. And the global precedent for this is really strong. Over 500 million doses have been administered worldwide since 2006.
All right, let's turn our attention to the corporate and business sector. We'll start with a key update from the IT industry body, NASSCOM.
So this is interesting. NASSCOM has actually revised its revenue growth forecast for fiscal year 26 upwards. They're now projecting 6.1% growth. But, and this is a big but that ties directly back to our lead story on AI, that optimism really doesn't carry over to the jobs front. NASSCOM is expecting job additions to be stagnant next year.
Now, shifting gears to the telecom sector. The regulatory authority, TRAI, is signaling that a major spectrum auction is on the way, and they're proposing some significant cuts to the base price, probably to encourage more companies to participate.
And the scale of this thing is just immense. We're talking about over 2 trillion rupees worth of spectrum that's going to be up for auction across multiple bands. That's a huge contrast to the much smaller sale values we've seen in recent years.
Okay, turning now to the banking sector, IDFC First Bank has disclosed a significant suspected fraud at its Chandigarh branch, and it involves accounts that are linked to the Haryana government.
The amount of the suspected fraud is around 590 crore rupees. The bank is alleging that employees, maybe working with some outside parties, fraudulently transferred the funds. An independent forensic audit is now underway.
And finally, for our corporate update, a really important governance move from one of India's largest conglomerates. The principal trusts of Tata Sons have given the green light for a third term for Chairman N. Chandrasekaran.
And the details here are pretty important. The approval came from both the Sir Ratan Tata and the Sir Dorabji Tata trusts. Crucially, the trustees also agreed to relax the retirement age rule, which will allow him to continue in the role beyond the age of 65. His current term is set to run until the end of February 2027.
Now, let's see what's driving the conversation on the opinion pages. We have two key editorials today, one focused on economic policy and the other on institutional integrity.
First, a Mint editorial is looking at asset cycling. In simple terms, this basically means keeping public assets, think roads or ports, under state ownership but leasing out the operating rights to private companies. The argument is that this can lead to four key benefits. You get efficiency gains, better fee collection, upfront cash for new investments, and lower risk for the state. But as they caution, it's all about successful execution.
And over at The Hindu, an opinion piece frames the whole Tirumala Laddu ghee controversy as a matter of both institutional integrity and public health. It traces the timeline from when the allegations were first made back in September 2024 all the way to the final charge sheet that was filed just last month. The core argument is that faith institutions have to maintain strict quality control and stay above the fray of electoral politics.
All right, let's close out today's briefing with the verified market numbers.
So here are the closing numbers on what was a very volatile day. The BSE Sensex closed down 1,068 points, and the Nifty 50 was down 288. In Forex, the rupee closed at 90.95 against the dollar, and oil is trading at around $71.78 a barrel. The main takeaway today is a market that's really grappling with the real-world cost of technological change. The big question now is whether this is just a short-term panic or the beginning of a long-term structural shift. That concludes today's intelligence briefing.